Bonjour, good morning. We'll get started. Before we get started, il est important de souligner que la ville d'Ottawa se trouve sur un territoire non cédé de la nation Algonquin-Anishinaabe, dont la culture et la présence ont enrichi et continuent d'enrichir ces terres. So I understand we have no regrets to date, and I'll ask the committee coordinator to do the roll call.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Vice Chair Curry.
Here.
Chair Desroches.
President.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? Okay. Before we get started with the first item, I want to first of all welcome everyone to the first meeting of the LRT subcommittee. This project is the largest infrastructure project in the history of our city and are tremendously important. And as a committee, we have important work to do to ensure that the projects receive specific and focused attention. This committee allows for enriched accountability and transparency for the Confederation and Trillium lines. We meet today following some very challenging years for City Hall for light rail transit projects. We've recently received the Commission of Inquiry report on the LRT and important updates from city staff on the status of the project. And those memos that we receive related to the project are available to us and of course available online. As a council, I think we believe that Ottawa's light rail transit projects should receive more focused attention to ensure that they are built, operate, and maintained in accordance to the project agreements and the public's expectation for safe, reliable transit service. And the mandate of the subcommittee will allow for monitoring and progress reports to help provide oversight over non-operational matters related to Line 1 and 2. This subcommittee presents an opportunity to provide increased and focused attention. The report of the Ottawa Light Rail Transit Public Inquiry contains recommendations on oversight and governance during the construction and service of the LRT. And the Light Rail Subcommittee will provide many opportunities to fulfill those recommendations and to track them, and we'll get more information this morning. Prior to this meeting, myself and the vice chair met with all the subcommittee members, and I thank them for their time. Some of the members are very much impacted on a day-to-day basis by the rollout and construction of Phase 2. I also met with Councilor Médard prior to this meeting as well to discuss the disposition of the motion that is being referred to today. And of course, I also met with staff and city officials to discuss the mandate of the committee. And we all want to build a transit system that is safe and reliable. I look forward to working with all members, my council colleagues and city staff towards improvement of the light rail projects and restore the public trust in the system. This committee is very much new to City Hall in terms of our governance. I hope we'll approve the terms of reference today, but I certainly expect that we will sort of work together to sort of evolve this to this committee, given that it is new and very much a non-traditional committee here at City Hall. So with that, I will turn to the first item on the agenda, which is the terms of reference. Are there any questions or comments on the terms of reference? None? Okay. Good. Seeing none, can someone move the adoption of that? Oh, okay. So no need to move it. So the item terms of reference are carried. Carried. Thank you so much. Next item is an update on the response to the public inquiry report. And I understand that Renee has a presentation for us today. Renee.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today at our very first light rail subcommittee meeting on this term of council. It's a pleasure to work with you, Chair Desroches and Vice Chair Curry, as well as all the subcommittee members. My team and I look forward to providing you with regular updates on our LRT system at these meetings. As you know, our LRT system has encountered some challenges since its launch in 2019. Train lines 2 and 4 are set up to open later this year. We are working to ensure that the launch will be seamless. Line 2 will run between Bayview Station and Limebank Station, and Line 4 will be the link to the airport. This is very exciting news and will bring much improved service to Carleton University and areas in the south part of the city. This subcommittee will play extremely important role as the city acts upon the recommendations outlined in the Ottawa Light Rail Transit Public Inquiry Report. The public inquiry looked specifically at the past, and the recommendations couldn't reflect all the work that had been done since 2021. I want you to know there has been a lot of progress made. The city and OC Transport take the report very seriously. My team has been working on the action plan since the report was published in November 2022. I will now pass the floor to Bart Cormier, Manager of Business and Technical Service Support Team, who will provide you with an update of the city's progress. We will bring our full action plan before subcommittee very, very soon. Bart, please.
Merci, René. If we could get the slides up, please. Thanks, Eric. Good morning, Chair, members of the subcommittee. My name is Bart Cormier, and I am the Manager of Transit Services Business and Technical Support Services Team, which is the team that is coordinating the development of the action plan to respond to the public inquiry. Bonjour, je me présente Bart Cormier. Je suis le gestionnaire service de...
I'm Bob Cormier. I'm the manager of the activities. This is the team that is behind the action plan that was presented after the public inquiry report.
To give you an update on our progress to date. Next slide, please. So I'd like to start by providing a bit of background about the public inquiry itself. So the Ontario government established the Ottawa Light Rail Transit Public Inquiry through an order in council on December 16th, 2021. Justice William Hourigan was appointed as the commissioner and given the mandate of investigating the commercial and technical circumstances that led to the stage 1 breakdowns and derailments of the Ottawa Light Rail Transit system. And he was also asked to make recommendations to help prevent these issues from happening again. Le juge William Hourigan a été nommé comme commissaire avec...
The judge was named as the commissioner responsible of the inquiry on the commercial and technical issues that hit the light train project. He was also received the order to actually present some recommendation.
June 13th and July 17th, 2022. In all, 41 witnesses were called, and the commission also heard from an expert panel on public-private partnerships. On November the 9th, 2022, Council received and approved recommendations in a report entitled Ottawa Light Rail Public Transit Inquiry and Recommended Next Steps. Those recommendations were that the city receive the opening and closing statements from the public inquiry, and it directed staff to bring the OLRT public inquiry's final report and recommendations together with a companion report outlining staff's response to the public inquiry report and including any lessons learned from transit staff. There were also directions given to the city clerk and the chief financial officer to incorporate learnings that had been gleaned from the public inquiry hearings themselves. So the clerk was directed to improve records management processes and information management processes for major city projects, and to establish guidelines for the use of instant messaging and social media in consultation with the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario. And the chief financial officer was directed to incorporate lessons learned from the public inquiry into the review of the ongoing review of the city's project management policy and framework. And of course, the final report of the public inquiry was released on November 30th, 2022. Next slide, please. So on November the 30th, Mayor Sutcliffe committed the city to developing an action plan to address the 103 recommendations in the final report from the public inquiry. OC Transpo was appointed to lead the development of the city's companion report, which will include that action plan, as well as a report on the recommendations made in the November 9th, 2022 report. OC Transpo staff have reviewed all of the recommendations in detail, and multiple city departments are now engaged to address all of the recommendations from a whole of city perspective. Many recommendations reflect lessons learned that have already been incorporated into Stage 2 light rail, and the public inquiry recommendations were carefully considered by staff as part of the negotiations with RTG on the global settlement. Next slide, please. So the public inquiry final report separates the recommendations into 12 broad themes that mirror the chronology of an infrastructure project running from planning to execution and maintenance. 64 of the recommendations, so the vast majority, fall within 4 different areas. So the first is creating an effective contract scheme, and that includes recommendations such as retaining independent advice to ensure that the project agreement reflects best practices, that the project agreement should incentivize early resolution of disputes. The second is transparency and effective planning and oversight during construction. That contains 12 recommendations, which include things like the contractor keeping the public sector clients, so the city in this case, apprised of realistic timelines for the completion of the project, and recommendations that the parties working on complex infrastructure projects should continually foster a culture of early reporting of issues, challenges, and mistakes. The third major point of focus is on public service. That includes recommendations such as where avoidable, safety critical maintenance shouldn't be performed over 2 different shifts, and recommending that the safety and needs of the public should be prioritized whenever dealing with any problems relating to maintenance. And then the final major area of focus in the recommendations are recommendations directed at OLRT 1. So these are more specific recommendations about our operations. These are recommendations such as Alstom continuing preventative maintenance of line inductors. So they're much more specific. Next slide, please. So this slide presents another breakdown of the recommendations, but this way by the responsible organization. So of the 103 recommendations in total, 8 recommendations were assigned to other levels of government, so the province or the federal government. 36 recommendations were assigned to the city as matters of general practice or opportunities for future improvements. So these are things that we've incorporated into stage 2 and will be incorporated into future major infrastructure projects. 40 recommendations were assigned to OC Transpo that are more specific to the operations of Ottawa's O-Train system, either its current or its future one. And then 19 recommendations address RTG more directly or require a significant amount of work to be done by them as part of that recommendation. And the city's role, we feel, for those is to provide oversight and ensure that RTG has a plan to bring those to fruition. Next slide, please. So I'd like to give a little update on the work that we've done to date since November. So of the 95 recommendations that the city can action directly, so other than the 8 that were directed specifically at other levels of government, the city has been working to coordinate updates to city policies with responsible departments. We're working on the creation of tools to ensure that recommended best practices are incorporated into future infrastructure projects. We're ensuring that recommended practices are fully incorporated into stage 2 light rail. Council's approval of the global settlement immediately completed 11 of the recommendations, so we've already made progress there. We're working to reinforce a collaborative relationship with RTG in line with the recommendations from the public inquiry. And as I mentioned, we're exercising oversight to ensure that RTG is addressing the recommendations that fall within their areas of operations. And finally, we're addressing the recommendations that target specific rail operational issues ourselves. Next slide, please. Sorry, I think we've skipped a slide. Can we go back? Here we go, sorry. So next steps, we'd like to spend a moment talking about how we're going to report to you on our progress. So staff plan to bring the substantive report on the city's action plan to the next meeting of the LRT subcommittee. That plan will review all 103 recommendations and the city's plan to address each of them. Staff are coordinating a third-party review of the action plan to ensure that we're bringing a plan forward that has the benefit of an independent perspective and is robust. The action plan will include timelines for completion or for achievement of significant milestones for each recommendation, as some of the work will necessarily be ongoing. And once approved, OC Transpo will post the action plan online on our website and will provide regular public updates on progress to the recommendations until all are complete as part of our commitment to greater transparency. Next slide, please. And so this is just a timeline of actions taken to date and anticipated. So going from November the 30th and the release of the report, we've provided several updates to council. The city continues its work with RTG on our shared responsibilities. We're making updates to city policies, procedure, and practices, as I mentioned. Council's approval of the global settlement occurred in January. This meeting is taking place today. We anticipate the companion report and action plan coming forward in March. And then we'll continue working on updates to the public, this subcommittee, and council on our progress as we move towards completion of all 103 of the recommendations, or at least the 95 that we can affect directly. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Merci. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Start with the members. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I guess the first question I have this morning is this presentation, we're seeing it for the first time today. Why was this not distributed sooner? It's a lot to digest. It's a lot for the media to digest.
Monsieur le Président, au fait, nous avons préparé cette présentation seulement pour faire.
This presentation was prepared for you just to tell you that we are starting to work on the recommendation from the report. So there's no new information in this on this file. But when we will be working on the next presentation, we can provide it to you beforehand. It is also very important to understand that it's difficult to have a presentation. It's easier to simply do the presentation and then publish the document afterwards.
This subcommittee's mandate is governance and oversight, and we're obviously working through terms of reference. There's a lot of things to evolve over the course of this term of council with how we operate. But I'm wondering if we can make it a practice of this subcommittee to require that materials that are being presented to us are, for the most part, made public well in advance of the meeting.
I think that's a fair comment, and I accept that feedback. And I think we'll certainly commit towards working towards that. I think what I heard from colleagues previously was there was a lot of verbal updates in the past, and I think we're working towards having more of these presentations. So we'll work on the mechanics of that. It's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you. Second question, a couple of things I'm not necessarily willing to wait for. One of the inquiry's recommendations was that there had to be renewed working group action on the rail wheel axle interface. I'm wondering who is working on addressing those issues? How often are they meeting? And what progress have they made thus far?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So we have a working group that meets on a bi-weekly basis to review the wheel bearing failure issue. We have members of Alstom, of OLRTC, RTM, RTG, and the City of Ottawa included in that working group. And there are many items that are discussed under that agenda. So we have the containment plan that is currently in place, that is discussed, and we get reviews back on the current status of the measures that we have in place, such as the inspections, such as the TSRs. But we also receive regular updates, and we discuss the longer term measures towards getting to a fix. So that is the root cause analysis. So there are a number of reports and a number of pieces of investigation that are coming together as part of that root cause analysis. And the TSB investigation is one of those key documents and key pieces of information which is feeding into the discussion.
I think we'll be talking more about the TSB report later in the meeting. Has the working group missed any meetings? Are they meeting regularly? It is my most important consideration for being a member on this committee, is addressing that issue. So forgive me if I get down in the weeds on it sometimes, but are they actually meeting bi-weekly? Are they being rigorous about that?
Yes,
okay.
They are.
Have they missed meetings?
No.
Rescheduled any? Okay, good. Is there any third party? Sorry, so you mentioned the constructors and the maintainers, city involvement. Do we have any third party expertise participating in those meetings?
We don't have third party expertise participating in every meeting. But when documents are brought forward, when investigations are brought forward or reports are brought forward, then they are shared with TRA. TRA is our safety consultant that has been involved in this issue for many years now. So that they're involved in providing review of documentation, but they're not involved in every meeting.
would it be worthwhile having them involved in every meeting? And I'm open-minded on that, but
Well, we've taken the position that we want to keep them involved. We want to have them informed of the progress, and we want to have their feedback on documentation, but we haven't seen the value in them attending every single meeting.
okay. I have one more question, if you'll indulge me, Chair. The RTG's implementation, I think the presentation made mention of our oversight of RTG's implementation of its share of the recommendations that came out in the inquiry. Who is doing that work, and what are the mechanics by which they're working?
So we have an overall oversight plan that the City of Ottawa's engineering department covers on an annual basis. So as part of that oversight, there will be focused attention on those areas where RTG needs to respond to the recommendations that are included in the public inquiry. So we've weaved into our annual program those specific recommendations.
Sorry, it sounds vague to me. The RTG has recommendations that it's responsibility that it has responsibility for implementing. Someone at the city is overseeing whether or not they are doing that. What are those mechanics? Are there documents? Who is reviewing those documents? Are there specific personnel assigned to that? How often are they checking in?
Mr. Chair, peut-être que je peux répondre à cette question. La première des choses.
I can answer this question. First of all, we have weekly meetings, not bi-weekly, it's weekly meetings. Everyone is there at the table. Of course, not all the specialists will be sitting with us at every single meeting. They will only be coming in when it's a very technical issue. Then we ask a small group to tackle the very technical issues. The weekly meeting is just to make sure that we're respecting our execution calendars. Personally, as a director, I participate in all of these meetings, and I make sure that RTG delivers on its recommendation. This is my responsibility. They make promises, they have to deliver. When it's not possible, then I will call them directly. I will call the PGG, Nicolas Truchon. In other cases, if needed, we can send them a lawyer's notice to make sure that we're very serious. But we're trying really to work in collaboration. When needed, we're using other tools to make sure that they do deliver on the recommendations.
May I ask, when was the last time you received or took a look at RTG's implementation of the inquiry recommendations and really understood, here's where we are today? Is that something that you've done this week, within the past 2 weeks, within the past month?
Mr. Chair, the last time we met with RTG was this Tuesday.
So as of this Tuesday, you feel you had a good understanding of exactly where RTG is in terms of meeting its the requirements to meet the inquiry recommendations?
Mr. Chair, correct.
That's what I'd like to hear. Chair, thanks for your indulgence.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we are on the subject of the inquiry report, the follow-up. I think the questions are good to help staff prepare for the kind of expectations that we're going to have once we see the follow-up report. So next speaker is Councillor Kavanagh online.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was Councillor Gower. Thank you very much for the presentation. In terms of the status by the numbers, you talk about ensuring recommended practices are fully incorporated into stage 2. That might need a meeting of its own. Perhaps we have to look at that deeply. I'd like to know more about that and how that works, because obviously that's extremely important as we move forward, and we're still building. So what can be done while we're still building?
Mr. Chair, we have taken a close look at all the recommendations, and there is good alignment between recommendations about project delivery and what's included in the stage 2 program. For example, engaging the independent safety auditor early in the process. So we have that independent safety auditor in place. They were there from the beginning. As we kind of look through the recommendations, a lot of what's in the plan is already kind of part of our program, either part of the project agreement or as part of a change that we've made to the program.
So you've already following the recommendations for stage 2 that have been put forward. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Is it possible to have more detail on that for future meeting? I don't expect you to have that off the top of your head. I mean, there's 2 components. There's the track and the train. And obviously the track is more part of the building going on for stage 2. So I think it would be good to have that broken down.
Mr. Chair, as part of the update on all 103 recommendations, we'll provide an update on how that impacts stage 2 and the stage 2 program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, Councillor Curry.
Can I let Councillor Brockington go ahead of me because he's got to leave, I think, at some point.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. Thank you for the report. It's good to see the first report. I appreciate the schedule that outlines the timelines of reporting back to the subcommittee. The recommendations in the commissioner's report, I think you said would be addressed through this committee. Is there any other business that you foresee that would not be germane for this committee and would need to go to council or some other committee, or is all business related to the inquiry going to be dealt with through this subcommittee?
Mr. Chair, all the recommendations that come from the report will be discussing here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that we don't foresee anything else that would not be dealt with at this committee. Everything will be dealt with through the subcommittee, correct? Okay. Is it fair to say that there will possibly be recommendations coming from the subcommittee in addition to the recommendations identified by the commissioner?
Mr. Chair, we are open to hear what councillors could propose, but I can tell you that before we received that report, we were bang on, and we were trying to find how to correct those issues, and for sure we will be always open to hear if we can do things better. But my team is working very, very hard to bring all the things that they can.
Excellent, very good. Chair, maybe for you, there may be a point where the subcommittee wants to make a statement about a past staff member, past elected official, current staff, current elected officials who were engaged in the LRT process, particularly stage 1, where we were concerned with their engagement and involvement that led to some of the outcomes. And I think accountability is very, very important. I don't know how that gets factored in to the decision-making or recommendations that this subcommittee makes, but clearly, as the commissioner's report indicates, there were people engaged in this process who I think need to be held accountable. And what I'm trying to wrestle with is how this subcommittee deals with it. If it's not this subcommittee, is it council? But if the subcommittee believes that individuals who were engaged in this process need to be held accountable, how do you do that? What is the process for that? Because at the end of the day, the city's been hurt by this process, and I do believe people need to be held accountable for that. I just don't know what the mechanism is, should this subcommittee come to those conclusions at some point in time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'll let you ponder that. I think, there's going to be an opportunity to see the follow-up that they're doing. My personal view is that we've got a lot of work to do with just the specifics of the recommendations in terms of the follow-up. And Anything beyond that, I guess that can be a discussion down the road, but I think we should be true to the specifics of the recommendations in terms of the follow-up there. That would be my view. Councillor Curry.
Thank you for that. And thank you for this presentation. It's helpful to have the themes, laid out and what recommendations jive with which themes. So really 95 to us. I mean, 19 are RTG, but really overall there's 95 recommendations for us as a committee to grapple with. I wonder about the other 8 though, the other 8 that are other levels of government. And in our conversations early on, we talked about how would we get reports on those. And I just wonder, what is the authority? Because this committee is so new, what is our authority to actually hold any other levels of government to account? Do you have any thoughts on how we're going to address those other 8? Because I think we can address the 95.
Chair, through you to the councillor, I don't know if accountability is necessarily the right word. I mean, the city is a creation of statute of the province, so I think the power certainly flows in one direction, but not in the other. I think if you look at the types of recommendations that they've made, they're not really ones, they're broader in scope. So, for example, recommendation 7 recommends that the province of Ontario investigate how to develop skills and capabilities at the municipal level required to lead large infrastructure projects. For example, creating a training program like an academy that would train municipal infrastructure project managers. So, I think the city could have a role to play in encouraging and participating in that. And there may be, with the subcommittee's direction, there may be some scope to reach out to the province to invite further discussion or to offer to participate or to consult with the implementation of the recommendations. I think it's also important to recognize, and perhaps I should have mentioned it in the presentation, that the scope of the public inquiry, while it is directed at Ottawa's LRT system, is broader than just Ottawa. And I think we see that in the recommendations that are particularly directed at the provincial and federal governments. They're looking to resolve problems like this anywhere in the province of Ontario within the provincial legislature's jurisdiction. And so I think those are the sorts of recommendations where if the province or the federal government were to enact them, all municipalities would benefit. So it's, there's, I think perhaps room to work within bodies like the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. There's members of council who are representatives on those bodies. So I think if that's the direction, we can certainly explore opportunities to ensure that the provincial and federal governments are looking at them. We've brainstormed a few ideas that we can make as part of our action plan, but we're a little cautious about taking on responsibilities where the responsibility for taking action really lies in a body that we have no direct control over. I hope that answers your question.
No, that's helpful. Sure. If you have recommendations there on what we could do as we get to them. The other are the ones specifically to RTG. And do we imagine that RTG would come and attend our meetings? And when we talked about this as a possibility, Chair DeRoche was asking, we had conversations with RTG, would they be open to coming and talking to us directly about their specific recommendations?
Chair, the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Curry. Good line of questionings, and I share that view for what it's worth. That this city responded very quickly. That we were committed to the follow up of this, and I think we had a high level commitment from the contractor, which is helpful. But it would, I think, really complement our follow up that we have their specific follow up and that of the province as well, in any levels of government. And I'm happy to assist in getting that. If involves communicating with them in some fashion. Councillor Gower.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up on Councillor Curry's questions. For other levels of government and various agencies that are mentioned specifically, is staff aware, have any other of those agencies or governments formally accepted or acknowledged the Commission's report? And are any of them that you're aware of working on any formal follow-up or review in a similar fashion to what we might be doing here at the city?
Chair, through you to the councillor, I don't believe, we know that Transport Canada has reviewed and is looking very closely at the recommendations. I'm not aware of other agencies having taken a formal position on enacting the recommendations, but that's just within my own knowledge. That's not to say that that's not happening.
Okay. I guess as we if there are reviews happening or we become aware of them, I think it'd be helpful to receive those as information documents here at committee as well as we go forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? From members or from city councilors? I don't see any on the online here. Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. If there are no other questions, we'll move to the next item, which is the referred motion from Councillor Menard. And I understand since that time, there has been, events that would, excuse me, there's been events that have sort of caused the councillor to want to update this. And I understand there's a replacement motion, and I'll ask Councillor Curry to move that so that we can get it on the table for disposition today.
Absolutely.
Okay, do all members have a copy of the motion or have
No.
Okay,
What is this? I sent it by email.
it was sent by email.
Wow, okay.
Okay, all right. Do we have extra copies here so that we can get folks up to speed on it, or check your email? Councilor Mayor, do you want to speak to it perhaps and read it?
Yeah, Chair, you want me to read this in instead of Councillor Curry?
I think she moved it. It's before us. Yeah. So I'll let you speak to it.
Sure. So I'll read out the therefore be it resolved clauses that are in there so that it's clear to folks. So I don't know that it's on the screen now. And the reason why it was changed is because we had a settlement with RTG that came in. This motion was tabled prior to the settlement with RTG and was intended to ameliorate that situation prior to that happening. But it was referred here instead. And so the motion has been updated in congruence with discussions with city staff, with the chair. And I'll read out the therefore be it resolves. It's that the light rail subcommittee recommend council direct the interim city manager to bring forward to council a report on the delegated authority, which has been delegated to the interim city manager with respect to stage 1 and stage 2 project agreements that would permit council to receive a briefing on the current use and application of delegation of authority on stage 1 and stage 2 of the LRT. Be it further resolved that the LRT subcommittee receive regular updates on the use of delegated authority from the interim city manager with respect to stage 1 and stage 2 LRT project agreement amendments, and direct the interim city manager to bring forward to council for approval any material amendments related to the stage 1 and stage 2 LRT project agreements. Be it further resolved that council revoke the delegated authority to the interim city manager with respect to any amendments to Schedule 14, which includes trial running criteria of the respective stage 2 project agreements. And be it further resolved that the interim city manager be directed to bring forward to council a revised proposal for delegated authority with respect to the stage 1 and stage 2 project agreements that would permit council to retain oversight over material amendments to the project agreements while ensuring technical and day-to-day operational matters continue to be managed by the subject matter expert city staff. So I think, Chair, in discussions with yourself and others, a report back on the delegated authority regime as it stands right now so that councillors, especially new councillors, are aware of it, makes a lot of sense in this regard. The big piece here around the revocation on the trial running criteria, I think, is important. This is something that I think city staff have agreed to based on the LRT subcommittee or the LRT public inquiry report. The public inquiry report speaks to this specifically. And obviously was a large issue, been reported on a lot last term. And in this case, I'd look to city staff to ask them how that would work, what that would mean. Obviously, we make big decisions around here all the time, but we get reports from city staff on their recommendations that would come forward, but it'd be more in a public manner, unlike what we saw last term, where trial running criteria seemed to have been altered. Council wasn't informed of that, and mistakes were made when it came to allowing those trains, I guess, more leeway, or allowing the trial criteria more leeway than we should have. And so this would solve that problem for stage two, which is I think what we're trying to do here. It's not just to look back on stage one and place blame. It's to try to get resolution for stage two, which this speaks to, and just appreciate staff's help in drafting. And I guess I would turn to staff at this point, Chair, and just ask them on the third clause on the Schedule 14 piece, would that help to resolve the issues that we saw last term with council not being formed about some changes to trial running?
I will speak French, so I want to make sure that everyone understands. So please use your headset. Chair, c'est très important.
Well, it's very important. This paragraph is very important. It's a very important paragraph in this motion. We've worked with the councillor. We're neutral in terms of your request. It's not up to us to tell you what to do and not to do. The only misgiving I might have, and this is René Almudcar speaking personally, the reservation that I would have is that if I don't have the authority to make proposals when I see things are not working, well, things will just come to a dead halt. It's going to be very, very difficult for me to continue to work in that context where I don't have the independence to make decisions. However, any decision has to come back to council. There's a difference between giving me the authority and reporting to you versus withdrawing our authority, which would mean I would have to wait for you to tell me what to do. I'm a trained engineer. I can't make decisions without that authority. Having said that, it's up to the council to make the final decision. If you decide that you want to withdraw that authority, you have to tell us what to do. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm trying to find the best way to say it in a respectful way. But if you're telling us that you want us to come and see you, just tell you whether we're changing things, why we're changing things, that's your right to do that. And that wouldn't take away any opportunity I have to provide excellent service to our users and to take decisions which would respect the oath that I've sworn to my professional order.
Sure. Can you tell me how many times the project? It's okay, Chair. Sorry, just on to questions now, I guess. Sorry about that. Can you just tell me how many times the project agreement Schedule 14 for stage 1 has been altered? How many times has it changed specifically?
Mr. Chair, the Schedule 14 on stage 1 was not changed. There was a gap in it because it didn't include pass-fail criteria, and so there were no changes made to it.
Fantastic. That was my understanding as well. If that's the case for this portion, you would only be coming back to council if there was a change to that Schedule 14, or if there was a portion where you were looking to launch trial, move past trial running and a go, no-go decision on stage 2. Is that not correct?
Monsieur le Président, ce qui est important de comprendre.
Well, what's important to understand here, when we're launching a new product, you have to do trial and error. My responsibility is to make sure that I come to council to say, well, these are the criteria that we've set out at the outset. These are the results that we've got. This is where I think where we should land. When I tell you where I think we should land, it's my duty to tell you also, this is the reason why I'm recommending this, that, or the other. Despite the fact that the criteria were such, this is why I'm recommending we do this or that. And I'll tell you what the impact and the advantages and disadvantages of it is. And you have the authority to, and I have the authority to take that decision, but I will report to you. Now, if you take away that authority, however, I have to make sure that what we've done in previous years and the goals are met. And if I can't do that, what do you want me to do? That's the difference. You'll have to tell me what to do. You'll have to make a decision. I can't work like that, really, because for me, I can't wait for you to tell me what to do. I'm not being paid to be told what to do. It's important for me to report to you. It's my duty to say, this is done. This hasn't been done. This hasn't been possible. This is what I suggest, A, B, and C. I recommend A for such and such a reason. And then we make the decision together about what to do. That's my job. It's my job with my team to make sure that we can't reach a specific goal that's already been set, that I come back to you with various options and suggestions. We're in the best position to present the options to you and to give you a transparent report on the advantages and disadvantages of each option.
Sure. So I guess just practically speaking, so we all understand, how many times would you be coming back to City Council on that Schedule 14, given the change in delegated authority? We don't have delegated authority for a whole bunch of things in this city. City Council makes tough decisions all the time, right? So we work with that within that. Not every city general manager has a ton of delegated authority on every single item. That's not how it works. So how would it work in terms of the trial running criteria versus the last time around? Would this prevent the large mistrust that we saw, the authority that was used last time in changing the trial running criteria from what council was told, a memo that was not sent to council that was changed, hidden information that the justice had indicated was being hidden from our council and the public? Would that help? Would this have helped in this situation under stage 1? And why wouldn't we do this now, given the issues that we experienced in stage 1, to not repeat those same mistakes in stage 2?
Alors, je commets devant vous aujourd'hui.
Well, I'm committing to you today. Every day we'll send you an email to tell you how the trial day has gone. We'll say it's been a good day, it's not been a very, very good day, and we will report to you on a daily basis. And if we see 10 days in that we're not on the right track, well, at that point, I will propose a meeting to see what we can do. Now, this is a lesson that we've learned from stage 1. We have to provide you with more information. We also have to make sure that you're aware of how things are going. However, a warning here. When we're doing these tests, it's not black or white. There can be lots of interpretations. You shouldn't underestimate the explanations that you'll be receiving on a daily basis. We're working with my team to give you a summary of the test day, and I'll set up a scale, go, no go, and you'll be able to see how things have gone exactly. So we'll be providing you with the information in a very clear way, and you'll know whether things are going well or not going well. You'll be able to read the summary that we'll provide to you of the day, and if needed, we'll hold a meeting. I'll tell you we're not on the right track. This is why. This is what I suggest. Do you agree? It's very important to do that. There's a big difference between what we see on paper and what we actually see when we go live. And of course, my desire is to provide a safe and reliable service.
Thank you. So I wanted to get the motion on the table and you'd introduce it. There is actually a delegation. I think it's just fair the delegation that they hear kind of the revised piece rather than speak to the one. So just from a procedural point of view, we'll go to the delegation, then we'll go to the speakers list. So I think we have John Redding on the list. Welcome, John. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, thanks, John.
Okay, Good. Great. Congratulations, Chair, Co-Chair. Wish you the best. Thank you. First of all, I don't envy you all for the tough decisions that are coming forward in this term of council. Transit reputation has been destroyed in the city over the LRT. The battle of trust, respect to your transit users and shareholders have been tarnished by politics, bureaucrats, and lawyers. The accountability factor has left the bill and pride of the LRT report released, or has it? Think who is around the table still. It is time the elected officials take more responsibility. I'm sure your quote that I sent in 2020 to a senior manager at OC Transport about these trains. It was sent to me from a senior operator from CP Rail Operations Midwestern US. These trains should have slip technology. The technology will, if correctly implemented, prevent skidding regardless of brake application. It also eliminates wheel slip when acceleration. End quote. We need a group or consultant that doesn't have influence with OC Transport, its contractors, or city officials. Like example, well, I know somebody that can do that, to tell our system is safe or not. As a former automotive parts manager, all the advertising in the world won't help you. You're throwing out good money. You have to make good decisions, including less time and camera on decisions. This is the time for you to shine. Who is really to represent more of the same, or your public shareholders? Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, John. Any questions from committee? No. Thanks for your time today, John. Sure we'll hear from you again. Thank you. Okay. Back to the speakers list. I have questions for comments on this. Marty Carr, Councillor Carr.
Hi, thanks. Am I allowed to ask a question when I'm a non-member of the committee, I guess? I just have a question on the motion. While I certainly appreciate the fact that council needs to have more oversight on the LRT, given all that's happened, I find it quite broad when we're saying that, transit will be looking after the technical and day-to-day operational matters. One of my observations early on when I was elected and looked at the LRT report is that in the city of Ottawa, we don't really have sort of an enterprise project management framework on how we more globally and consistently look at how projects are managed. And early on, I put a motion forward, and it passed unanimously on having finance put together a enterprise project management framework and to bring that back to the committee that was formerly known as FEDCO. Because right now in the city of Ottawa, we have a business case proposal and some project management best practices, but it spoke to nothing on how projects are sort of tiered and gated within the city of Ottawa. So that means, you smaller projects under a certain threshold, depending on cost, complexity, and risk, would be entirely delegated to staff authority. The governance was low level. And the higher you get, you would have more oversight. And to me, it would make sense to tie something, projects of this size, to sort of that project management proposal where it more clearly outlines what council's role would be with respect to governance and oversight of those major decisions. So, for example, when you look at the size of a project and you gate a project and you divide it up into chunks and you don't allow it to pass to the next gate until you have council's authority. And I wonder if it would provide more definition and ability to make decisions if we were to tie it to something like that enterprise project management framework that's to be coming back, as opposed to having council assume to sort out what is technical, to change control requests that this level come here or there. It would perhaps make more sense. This isn't the only multi-million billion-dollar project we're going to have. We'll have other projects that are perhaps not quite at this level of complexity, risk, scope, cost, but certainly more. And I'm just wondering if it would be better to tie it in there. I don't know if anybody from finance is here to answer that question or who would answer it, but just a thought as I read the motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Carr. I'm not sure if there's a comment from staff. Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, so Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I think that as part of the first step in that process, bringing back the report on the delegation of authority and kind of explaining how it's used and what the context is, providing some definition around, I know in the motion, there's this idea of a material amendment and, providing some definition around that so that we can be clear on that. Obviously, today, the financial authority, it's very clear, but amendments is maybe not as clear. And so I think as a first step, we bring back the report. And then as kind of a further step, we can work with our partners in finance and other departments in the city to assess what does project management at the city look like going forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carr, anything else?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Gower?
Thank you. Schedule 14 includes trial running criteria. I don't know what else is in Schedule 14. Can staff give us a quick overview of what all is in that?
So, Mr. Chair, Schedule 14 describes the testing and commissioning requirements for the project, for both projects, and includes the criteria for the trial running program. So it does deal with the number of issues that are in the public inquiry, referencing site acceptance testing, factory acceptance testing, all of those testing requirements. But the conclusion of it is really the trial running requirements.
Okay. My other question was going to be to staff. What does staff understand as material amendments actually means? But I won't ask you to answer that because I think the point is really what the mover's definition is, or what staff's definition, or what any of us on committee's definition of material amendments. I don't think is clear enough right now for us to say, let's remove all delegated authority on that. I think we can still have oversight and have delegated authority to any project that the city undertakes. I don't think not having the ability to decide on everything as a council reduces our oversight. We need to find the right balance between those two things. I'm supportive of the first, therefore be it resolved, which is asking the city manager to bring forward a report on what delegated authority is in the context of stage 1 and stage 2. I'm not ready to vote on the other ones because I don't fully understand what the implications would be. There are some good reasons to have delegated authority to minimize some of the political risk. I would hate to see decisions about safety in some way politicized at city council. And I think it's really important before we start changing delegated authority to make sure we understand what those implications are. So we get that balance between oversight, council decision-making, and staff get delegated authority correct. So Chair, I would, if this comes to a vote, I would support the first clause, but the other three I would dissent on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Chair. I am going to support Councillor Menard's motion today. The Commission's finding with respect to trial running and the change in criteria is fundamentally at the root of a lot of those early days issues that we saw that had such a profound impact on transit riders right across the city. And I think it's worthwhile reading it out again. I've pulled it up quickly. The Commission finds that the determination by the city and RTG that the system had passed trial running was only possible because the criteria were changed and discretion was applied for the purpose of achieving a pass. This conduct was not consistent with the goal of trial running, which was to demonstrate that the system could reliably perform as intended. I am concerned about that go, no-go decision, and I want to ensure that council is kept fully informed. Council has been burned once. I think we all have the assumption of appropriate and professional behavior on the part of staff through the course of opening stage 2, but we've been burned and the residents of Ottawa were burned. And we need to put in place as the oversight body the appropriate protections to ensure that we are informed. We have to make sure that we have, as the Commission put it, the opportunity to act. And passing this motion today and removing delegated authority from the criteria and changing the criteria is the way that we ensure that we're going to have what the inquiry called the opportunity to act. Had we not experienced what we experienced in stage 1, I would probably be significantly more trusting. But that was months of impact to transit riders because we opened an LRT that was not ready for business. And so I will be supporting Councillor Menard. I look forward to getting the report back with respect to what the delegated authorities can and should be. And there's an opportunity to put that delegated authority back in the hands of staff, depending on how that's argued. But I don't want to get burned again. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is about trust, and I'm hoping that we can. Well, I do trust our general manager, and I hope that that's not considered to be any to be read as not. This is about reporting directly to councillors. And when I look at the report and it talks about the test running and substantial completion, that was where it fell apart, is that it wasn't substantial completion. And but we didn't know that. We were the ones that were not aware. So we're just trying to get around having it made without our knowledge. I fully expect to have qualified engineers like yourself, Renee, who are giving us great advice, telling us what is going on. I don't see this as taking that power away. We rely on it, but it means that it's reporting to us as councillors, and I hope that that's read as that, and that we are looking to make sure that we all know when it's going to happen. And nobody likes the bad news of delays, but we have to live with that. So I hope that that's how it's looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curry is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just so I'm very clear, with authority comes responsibility. So you take authority away from someone and then you're responsible. So I gather if we had to make the no-go decision and then something went wrong, then it is our responsibility for making that decision. So I guess I would ask councillors what they think they have as a qualification in terms of a background in engineering and understanding of what is safe or not safe, just from a report. I'm not so sure that councillors have the ability to know what is really safe or not. And then what would happen if there was an accident after council made the decision to go? Then what? So I will be supporting part one, like Councillor Gower, and not the rest of it, but I would look forward to hearing the reports that we will get to make sure that we do have all the right information in front of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Curry. Councillor Leeper.
To be clear, I don't think we're being asked to take authority. The motion doesn't put it in our hands for a go, no go decision. I think what the delegated authority that is under consideration here is whether or not to change the testing criteria very specifically. And so we'd be asking, we would be asking Madame Amilcar to come back to council if she is proposing changing the testing criteria. And I am fully confident that she and her team can talk to us in terms that we can understand about the implications of that. I remember one of the first decisions was on my plate when I got elected was, how are we going to deal with frazzle ice at Lemieux Island? And, that's a decision they put in council's hands. How are we going to ensure safe drinking water in light of the fact that we have frazzle ice at one of our water treatment plants? We're asked to make decisions that are difficult all the time, that are complicated all the time, and that our staff are very good at explaining to us with respect to the consequences of those decisions. So I'm very comfortable asking Ms. Amilcar to come back to council if she is proposing changing the testing criteria that are set out in the project agreement.
Okay, any final questions from committee members or councillors online? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor Bernard and okay, or yeah, sure.
Thanks, Chair. Just some further questions. I don't think we're being very clear here. It is our authority, right? It's our authority. We delegate some authority, but it's still our authority. So you're ultimately responsible as a city councillor and as the mayor in the city. We are responsible. We've delegated our authority away, and we saw major issues with the delegation of our authority away in the stage one. But just to the city clerk's office, can you perhaps explain a little bit better the delegation of authority and ultimately who is responsible for day-to-day decisions on operational issues in the city? If you could just provide a little bit more context for this subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the broader scheme of things, Section 5 of the Municipal Act states that the municipality acts through council. So council is supreme, as the members have discussed earlier. With regards to that, there's also Section 26 of the Municipal Act, which allows council to delegate, parts of its authority, or quite frankly, all of its authority, to staff. Our delegation of authority bylaw is very clear that it says it must be in writing, it must be understandable, and it must be legally implementable at the end of the day. So, thank you.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think it's also just to the point about safety and about expertise. I mean, it's ironic, I think, that we're talking about that today after what just was released yesterday. That TSB report talked about concerns that I know our staff have also provided context for, and RTG has provided context for. But without the discussion around our authority, with us delegating authority, we had major safety issues on the train. Had nothing to do with our authority. We had major safety issues, derailments, public in peril. So just to say that this is somehow going to compromise safety, I'm sorry, but we've been through it. Safety's been compromised already. It's been compromised with this delegation of authority. So I don't buy that argument. And we're sitting here today after what we've all experienced, and we're still going to be trepidatious about making a decision that doesn't affect day-to-day operations in any way. Your day-to-day operations do not change from this delegation of authority. Am I not correct on that? I'm pretty sure I'm correct, because we don't delegate authority on a whole bunch of large issues. So you can still work day to day. That's not going to affect you. But if there's big decisions that come back as part of changes to that, then council sees them. And I trust you, but I didn't trust the last process. So this is something that the public, I think, needs to see. It's not about that trust with you or not. It's about the public. It's about our authority. And it's about what we should have done and what the public inquiry has said. This would tick off some of those public inquiry boxes that we've said, Chair. Specifically, they've talked in the public inquiry about council and any other person or entity charged with project oversight must be able to exercise meaningful oversight of critical decisions made by staff directly in the report recommendations. So this is that. I didn't draft this clause, okay? This clause came from staff because they understand that this is an issue that likely needs to be addressed. This pushback is coming from other areas. So let's do the right thing today. Pass the motion in its entirety. And this whole thing about clause one is the bare minimum. The rest of it is prudent decision-making. So I think, my goodness, after all we've been through, if we can't even pass this, I don't know. I don't know how much this subcommittee is charged with oversight, Chair, of the recommendations from the report. And if the first decision we make is to say we're going to backpedal on oversight and not pass something that would give more oversight to council, then I'm not sure the mandate of the committee is fulfilling its objectives. So let's pass the motion. Let's pass all of the clauses of this motion. I was chatting with the mayor's office. I'm on the fourth portion of the motion, willing to send that back because I think the interim city manager has a point about being able to prepare for those things and what changes they want to bring after doing the study. And I think to Ms. Stephenson, that's a good point, right? That fourth clause in there, you want some time to be able to see what the delegated authority is, bring a report back to this committee. That makes sense to me. I'd be willing to say on that fourth point, let's take that out and let's bring that back when we have the other 3 points come back to us, which were drafted by city staff. Drafted by city staff, not by me. And approved. They said they have no problem with it. So take that fourth one out. Let's come back with it, but let's pass those first 3 clauses, which are the functional oversight and information back to this committee and the issues with stage 1, fixing problems for stage 2. But Chair, I guess I will consider that my wrap up.
Okay, so before we get to the vote now, I think we're going to be looking to have the split. I heard that. I thought I heard from staff that there was assistance in the preparation of this. I thought I heard from staff that, it really is the decision of the committee, that there is not a strong recommendation one way or the other. I'm willing to support the first motion. I've made that clear publicly and to my colleague that I think the first step is to get a clear understanding of our delegated authorities in terms of the timing and understanding when that third-party oversight will also be part of those decisions that will be made. And I think, quite on the contrary, that the role of this committee is to do the deep dive on the decisions that are being made, the frameworks that we have in place. And I'm not prepared to pull delegated authorities. And I'm not prepared to go back to my community and say that we've made a decision that the politicians should make more decisions here instead of the technical staff in terms of the importance of this project. So with that, we'll proceed with the voting on each of the paragraphs. Yeah, point of order, Councillor Gower.
If you'll permit a quick question, how quickly does staff think they can get this report back to us?
Mr. Chair, I think for the next meeting, we could be ready.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Coordinator, so we'll divide up the 4 paragraphs. I heard that, I think, from members. So on the first paragraph, is that resolved? Is that carried? Carried. On the second paragraph, yeas and nays?
Councillor Gower?
No.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Councillor Tierney?
Yes.
Councillor Lieber?
Yes.
Vice Chair Curry?
No.
Chair Desroches?
Yes.
4 yeas, 2 nays.
That is carried. Third paragraph, yeas and nays?
Councillor Gower?
No.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Councillor Tierney?
No.
Councillor Lieber?
Yes.
Vice Chair Curry?
No.
Chair Desroches?
No.
2 yeas, 4 nays.
That item is defeated. Yeas and nays on the last paragraph?
Councillor Gower?
No.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
Excuse me, was that not with, I thought the mover said that that was being taken out. Is that, we're voting on it? Just want to clarify.
Okay, all right. I didn't hear that as clearly, but I'm seeing that Councilman Menard has agreed to withdraw that.
Yeah.
So overall, the motion as amendment. Carried with the amendments.
Carried.
Because the first paragraph was passed, second paragraph was passed, and the third one was defeated. Okay, and then the fourth one has been removed. Okay. Thank you. So we'll go to just the next order of business, and I know there's been a request for other business, which I will speak to, but the number 6 item is any in-camera items. I don't believe there are any notice of motions. None to date. Any inquiries? None. Other business. I have had a request from Councillor Lieber, and I think it's a good one to get an update on just a recap on the memo that we received yesterday regarding the Transportation Safety Board, and in particular, the response of the City of Ottawa and what we're doing to mitigate that. I understand that Renee was to be available to media after this meeting. So I think it is fitting that we do spend some time on it this morning, and staff are prepared to do that. I would just caution for future meetings. I mean, this memo came out yesterday, so we should be true to having items as a formal agenda item so that councillors can come and prepare for it, and delegations can present or what have you. But again, given the circumstances of this one, I think it's fitting that we bring it forward today, and staff are in fact ready. Again, I wouldn't want to see things come forward where staff aren't ready. In this case, I think we are on solid ground to hear from Renee this morning. So Renee, if you could sort of just recap that the memorandum. I understand that would have been made available publicly as well, and I understand you'll spend some time focusing on sort of the mitigation measures that are in place there. So if you could proceed with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the committee with more information on the rail safety advisory letter we received from the Transportation Safety Board, which we call TSB. First and most important, I want to be perfectly clear. The safety of our customers and my team is the #1 priority. The old train is safe. If for any reason we believed that the train was not safe, we would not operate it. Since day one, I have been committed to being transparent with council and our customers. When we received the letter, we took the time to review it and then organize a meeting with RTG, Alstom, RTM, and TSB. We have thoroughly reviewed the letter and ensured that the enhanced system safety measures currently in place align with the TSB suggestions and this letter. In a moment, my colleague Richard Holder will provide more details on these measures. On Monday, we held a meeting with the TSB and RTG to ensure we have full clarity on their concerns, and we are prepared to answer questions from council and the public. Once we had completed these preliminary steps, we proactively released the memo and the letter to council. After reading the letter as well as the clarification meeting with the TSB, I can assure you that all the measures are in place and well monitored to ensure a safe and reliable train system. I personally took the train yesterday from my house to the office. Si je pensais que c'était pas safe, je l'aurais pas pris. Je tiens à ma vie.
If I thought it was not safe, I would not have used it. My life is precious to me.
Our engineering team and a group of outside experts to determine the root cause of the issues with the axle hub assembly. Once the root cause analysis is complete, we will be able to determine and implement a permanent solution. While the investigation continues together with RTG, we have implemented measures to ensure we can operate the trains and the system safely. RTG has also provided the city with written confirmation is safe. We asked for this letter. It's important to remember that this confirmation is in addition to the outside experts we have monitoring our operations and a robust safety regime. We are working with RTG on a permanent solution, and I will bring an update on the progress of the robust plan to the appropriate committee. I would also note that the recent settlement agreement with RTG implements a solid plan to action to the TSB recommendations and resolve these issues. We remain focused on working collaboratively to implement solutions that make Train Line 1 operations sustainable and reliable for our customers. I will now turn it over to Richard Holder to provide more information on the TSB recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I would like to do is go through the letter from TSB and extract some of the key findings and observations and suggestions, and then talk about what the city is doing in terms of actions to deal with those suggestions and observations. So in September 2021, the Rail Safety Advisory Note that was provided indicated that OLRT may wish to ensure that a heat detection system was in place. In response to that, the city, working with RTG, has been working on a pilot to determine the proof of concept of an onboard sensor solution to measure vibration that will provide an early warning signal for a failure condition. The November 2021 RSA suggested that OLRT may wish to conduct an in-depth review of all work performed on safety critical components to confirm that procedures are followed. City has worked with RTG and with TRA to assess those procedures that are in place, and TRA has provided an independent opinion about whether service could resume as a consequence of the out of service state when the failure occurred. City created a new transit engineering services unit, and RTG has committed to providing additional technical capabilities as part of the recent settlement agreement. The third item. Since OLRT LRVs have no onboard automated cartridge assembly heat detection system, the free play inspections continue to be necessary. And so the city with RTG continues to complete the following inspections. There is a free play inspection every 7,500 kilometers on all axles with cumulative mileage below 175,000 kilometers. For those axles within the middle 3 LRV bogies, they are inspected for free play every 3,750 kilometers when the mileage exceeds 175,000 kilometers. And RTG is proactively replacing axles for the motor bogie at each end of the LRV when cumulative mileage exceeds 175,000 kilometers. The fourth observation was that the cartridge assembly failure continued to pose a risk to safety until the issues are resolved. In addition to the inspections that I just outlined, the following actions are being taken as part of the overall containment plan. So we have measures in place where RTM inspects all vehicles daily prior to launch. And we have temporary speed restrictions that are in place at several locations along the alignment, particularly at curves, to reduce the overall forces on the axle. The next observation, ensure that all parties involved in the OLRT undertaking work together to resolve design, operational, and maintenance risks to safety as they emerge. And the recent settlement agreement with RTG implements a solid plan that actions that the TSB has suggested and made observations on are in place to resolve those issues. The next observation was that parties involved should ensure that effective onboard monitoring systems for safety critical LRV components be in place. And as I mentioned earlier, the city is working with RTG to pilot an onboard sensor solution to measure vibration that will provide an early warning signal for a failure condition. The city is also continuing to pursue technologies that exist either in North America or in Europe that would provide heat detection. The final root cause analysis is ongoing, and OC Transpo holds weekly status meetings with RTG to track the progress on various tests and analysis required to determine the final root cause. So that's a summary of the City of Ottawa actions when compared with the observations from TSP. Thank you.
Thank you. D'autres choses, René, avant qu'on passe aux questions? Questions, conseiller Leeper?
Thank you, and I'll be brief today because it did just come out yesterday. And I know a number of us are going to need to digest the report a bit more, but I do have, I guess, two critical questions. En premier, Madame Almecar, comme vous, je vais voyager par train
Like you, I did take the train, Mrs. Amilcar, and I'm confident it is safe.
But it is only safe if I understand. I want to have a lay understanding of this. It is only safe because we have frequent inspections. There are mitigations in place like track slowdowns. The train, if it was running as per the specs, we would not be able to run this train safely without those frequent refurbishments, without frequent inspections, extraordinary measures. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chair, the short answer is yes. However, I would like to say there is risk everywhere, right? But when we know that we have a problem, we have the responsibility to put mitigation measures in place to avoid something happen. It doesn't mean if we don't have those measures, something will happen again, but we know what happened before, we cannot accept the status quo.
So there are some measures that are being undertaken to ensure that the train is safe and that we mitigate the risk of similar events to what happened previously. My critical concern, I don't know that you have the plan today, is are those sustainable for the long haul? It strikes me as a tenuous proposition that we can continue, or RTM can continue to try to nurse those trains into service for the next couple of decades with these kinds of measures in place. Are the measures sustainable? And what is the plan? How are we developing the plan to ensure that there is a sustainable future for these vehicles? And if there isn't a sustainable future for these vehicles, what is the plan from there?
Mr. Chair, c'est une excellente question.
Excellent question, Mr. Chair. This is why we made the decision of having an agreement with RTG1 to make sure that quickly we can find long-lasting solutions. And one of these reasons was the eastern extension that we want to put in place in 2024. So we want to be sure that all corrective measures are there so that we don't have to be in mitigation constantly. Today, they want to ensure the safety of the train, but is this what we recommend on the long term? The answer is no, because it takes a lot of staff to do these inspections and a lot of oversight from our part, because we also do a lot of verification with Alstrom and RTG to make sure that these additional measures are executed. So it's not sustainable for us either to be in this context in future years, but you must understand that it is very complex. It's a very complex issue, and it can't be accomplished in a few months. I've been here for quite a few months, and I can tell you that we made a lot of progress, and we want to continue to progress so that we find a sustainable solution, and so phase 2 goes ahead properly.
And today I'm mostly just keen to hear that statement that no, this isn't sustainable for the long term and that it needs to be addressed. So that's where I'll leave that today. Getting a little further into the weeds, I am confused about the TSB recommendation with respect to heat monitoring versus what I'm hearing is our mitigation, which is we've put in place vibration monitors. That strikes me as apples and oranges. Can you just help me understand why the installation of vibration monitors satisfies the TSB's recommendation with respect to heat monitors?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So there's a couple of points I would like to make around that discussion. So Heat detection technology is common and familiar within Canada and across North America, but it is common within heavy freight.
Yeah.
When we look at light rail systems across North America and across Europe and around the world, as far as we are aware, there are no examples of heat detection being employed on a light rail system. And one of the main reasons for this is the actual structure of the axle assembly itself. So on a freight train, we have the bearings and the hubs on the outside of the wheel, whereas on an LRT system, we have it inboard of the wheels. So the technology that exists, as far as we are aware, for heavy freight systems, would not be appropriate for a light rail system. So that's one observation. The second observation is related to the failure mode of the first derailment, where the investigation into how that axle failed indicated that there was plastic failure of the materials due to very high heat. And the failure occurred catastrophically. The high heat occurred directly before the failure of the assembly. So the position from Alstom and from other experts that we spoke to was that even if heat detection had been in place at that time and provided a trigger that the axle was getting hot, it would have been too late. The failure would have occurred. So that has been the position for many, many months. And so the heat detection is one form of condition monitoring for the state of the axle. It helps to provide a warning. We believe that that is absolutely necessary. So working with RTG, an alternative method has been employed on a pilot basis, which is the monitoring of the vibrations within the axles. That is technology that can be applied to a light rail system. So that is why we have been pursuing vibration monitoring equipment. So if I can just continue, just the last piece of information, the recent TSB report provides their investigation into the bearing failure that occurred in the summer of 2022. And they indicate, as a consequence of them reviewing the materials, that they believe that there was elevated levels of heat in that axle. So that causes us to reconsider our position about heat detection. And so we are actively looking now at what heat detection technologies are out there that we can apply to a light rail system.
Interesting. Okay.
So we are responding to the investigation which we have just been provided.
Has TSB made a recommendation we can't meet?
I don't want to speak on behalf of TSB in terms of their suggestions and observations. The city is actively looking at alternative heat detection technology that we can apply to the LRT system.
Mr. Chair, je peux peut-être juste apporter un petit complément à votre question, conseiller Lippert.
If I may, I would like to complement the question. We have recommendations. If we think that the tool needed is not the appropriate one for the recommendations, we will try to find another way to be able to satisfy to all of the recommendations. So if there is some slack in the bearing, we have to find a solution. So we're proposing the heat detector. We decided to put a vibration detector. At the end of the day, we're having the same results. If there's some slack, we will know it, either due to vibration or heat. Like my colleague said, following observations received, we rejected the heat detector system. We might be thinking about it, but we're still working on a solution. We wanted today to provide you with the information that we have, but we're still working on a solution. This is very important to say. Sometimes it's a trial and error situation. That's the reason why you have to have the right people at the right place at the right time to rethink our hypothesis, because we've talked to a lot of specialists. But if we're going to put a heat detector on the LRT, we will be the first city to have one. It's a novelty. It doesn't mean that we cannot do it now, but with the new information that we have, we will continue to work on it to see if it's actually a solution. But at least we will be able to work in parallel on another system that will reduce the slack that we have in the bearing system. So do you think that they will be okay with another solution, another alternative? Answer. We are working with the TSB. We want to do some tests. We have some sensors already in place to look at vibration, and everything works for right now. It's kind of a pilot project. We are doing very frequent inspections, and if there's an issue, we are able to see it. What we will do is with a closed circuit, we will push the machine until it breaks. And we want to see how the vibration detection system works. So then we will know that at reaching such a level, this is where it will fail. So we will be able also to know at which level we will be able to detect an issue. So we will actually be able to have an indicator. We will be able to work below that critical stage. And if we do have an issue, we will have a detector that will be able to work before we have an issue, and then we'll be able to take the right decision. Thank you so much for your patience, Mr. Speaker.
Councillor Gower, I know you have a good line of sight on the operations of the LRT with the Transit Commission. You know, this is probably in the middle here. It is a follow-up to the Commission of Inquiry, so we are spending time on it today. But I appreciate the work you're doing at Transit Commission as well.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was going to, first of all, thank staff for being ready to answer questions on this today. It's fortunate that we do have the meeting today. And I think it's really important for the public. You know, I can completely understand the concerns that the public might have after reading the letter or reading news reports. When you read things like, cartridge assembly failures continue to pose a risk to safety. I completely understand why the public would be very concerned. I also have full confidence in OC Transpo and you know, your attention to safety and your consideration of safety. I'm thinking back to Transit Commission last term when one of the consultants from TRA who are doing inspections, they were talking to us about the spectrum of risk and safety. And I think there was an analogy like a bicycle. A bicycle can be a very dangerous device. But if it's well maintained and you're inspecting that there's air in the tires and the chains are well lubricated and the brakes are tight and you're wearing a helmet, it can be a very safe activity. And you can kind of extend that analogy to rail. What I'm wondering about is if the TSB had a concern about safety to the public, do they have the ability to order a stop of service?
Mr. Chair, TSB can recommend, and the authority to stop rely to the city manager, and it's Sam Beretta, who is our RMCO, who's in charge of that. So for sure, we will always follow recommendation from TSB and we'll take the decision based on those recommendations. But TSB's role is to recommend.
And the TSB, to be clear, has not recommended that the service be suspended or stopped in any way? Correct. Okay. Okay, thank you. I was also going to ask about who does have the authority to stop service, and you've answered that, so thank you. Mr. Holder mentioned the information in the TSB report about heat detection. That was new information we didn't have. Is there any other information in the TSB report that's new information for the city or RTG?
Thank you, Chair. There is no other new information that we feel like we need to respond to or change our course of action.
Okay, thank you. And then What is the time frame for completing the root cause analysis into the axle issues?
Mr. Chair, c'est ça qui est difficile parce que vous voyez, on
That's
fait beaucoup.
actually the issue that we have. Like I said before, it's a lot of trial and error. On the other hand, we have an agreement with Alstom, RTM, and RTG is that we want to complete everything before the opening of stage 2. So by 2024, we will know what to do, and we'll be able to put in place the mitigation measures.
I think it was referred to as an unusual vibration incident in July 2022. Have there been any other wheel-related issues that have been discovered while trains are in service?
Mr. Chair, the answer is no. And we have daily review with the RTG every morning at 9. We have a review what happened yesterday, what we should expect today, and we review everything, and nothing to notice today.
Okay, merci beaucoup.
Thanks, Councillor Gower. Councillor Curry, any questions left, or did Councillor Gower plow the road there?
Oh, there we go. Thanks. That other one was an excellent question. I was thinking the same thing. Oh, it's so excellent. No, my only question now is, when I looked at this report, I find it interesting always how a report is designed and what they included. And they included at length a chart to talk about 2 other models that we don't have. We have the Spirit. And if you look at the weight of each of them, empty weight, loaded weight, ours is the heaviest one. And it's interesting you said that the heat detection is only looked at for heavy rail. And I'm wondering, they don't say you might want to consider going to a lighter model. I think about how long it takes to do this maintenance, how much it might cost us to do this maintenance, how much it is sustainable, to Councillor Leeper's question. And they don't recommend that. They recommend making sure it's safe and doing all the checks and everything else. But is it not potentially that we would want to go to a lighter rail vehicle? It is called light rail vehicle, but ours is so heavy.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe just to talk a little bit about the reference to heavy rail in connection with the heat detection technology. So the connection really is not in the fact that the vehicle's heavy. The connection is in the fact that almost all heavy rail via CN across Canada has vehicles that have bogies with axles with the bearings on the outside, so that they can be monitored more easily with a heat detection system. The difference that we have with the light rail vehicle, we call it light. There is a difference in weight, that is true, but the real difference is in the design of the assembly of the bogie, where we have the bearings on the inside. So that's the real difference. It's not, I suggest we don't focus on the heavy light piece. It's more on the design of the bogie.
Okay. And so, I mean, I think we'll have a lot more to come to us still, but there isn't a thought that we would go to a different vehicle entirely. And is there one that would actually have the monitor equipment on the outside that would be light rail?
Mr. Chair, the answer is no.
All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of the questions kind of lead to where I'm headed. So we have stage 2 light rail in the east end of the city, and my council colleague and I have been talking about this. We're going to see testing starting in 2023 for service delivery in 2024. So all these discussions about heat sensing, vibration sensing, obviously we have this particular model of train specifically because it's got to pick up speed from Blair all the way to Trim. It's going to be doing approximately 80 kilometers, I assume up to 100. Are we going to have all these devices in place prior to that testing?
The plan that we discuss on a weekly basis with RTG is aimed at having a final solution to the bearing failure issue by the end of 2024. So in advance of the opening of the extension to the east.
The testing begins in 2023, though. We're literally going to see the trains running around and it won't have these. I feel we should have some of these monitoring devices on that segment of testing to make sure we know how it's going to operate. You're saying the end of 2024, but we don't know when the train's going to run in 2024 in the east. We haven't actually planted a flag because we did that before in stage one. That wasn't a good idea. I think we have to have these monitoring devices on the trains during the testing phase. Is that something that we can commit to?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to expand on my answer. So we have a plan to work with RTG on the root cause analysis and a corrective action plan by the end of 2024 to be more focused on your specific question, the condition monitoring. Mm-hmm. So we have accelerometers, which are the vibration detection devices. We have them fitted to 10 vehicles currently. We have another order in for another 10 vehicles. And then we are in the process of trying to source enough material so that we have the whole fleet fitted with these vibration detection monitoring devices.
Okay, great.
With the exact timeline is unknown, but we are trying to advance that as quickly as possible.
And you'll report back to well, it could be Transit Commission, this committee, council on a regular basis?
We can do that, certainly.
I think that's important. Thank you. Just in my mind, typically what's the speed of the trains now on the current stage one light rail versus what it will be in stage two in the east? Because they're dramatically different.
Mr. Chair, the average speed on stage one is probably in the 30 to 35 kilometer between the starts and stops. On stage two, we do have a couple of very long sections where we are expecting to get up to 100 kilometers an hour. Now, one of the things that we're seeing on stage one is that, and where we've applied the speed reductions is in the tight curves.
Right.
Now, when we look at the east connection, we have one relative, it's not as tight as kind of what we have on stage one, but there is one curve coming out of Blair, and then the rest is all basically straight. And so we have an advantage there, but we take your point and we take your concern, and we will be monitoring that as we do the commissioning.
Great, thank you. And last question, where's Alstom in this entire thing? Like, they seem to be kind of radio silent, and it's their product. So are we in communications, or are we just too small of a fish for these guys to even respond to what appears to be a failure of their product in many respects? I mean, if I buy a car, you buy a Pinto, there's going to be a recall of some sort or some kind of repairs. It's radio silence out of Alstom. Do we communicate with them?
Mr. Chair, la réponse est oui. Il y a des représentants.
The answer is yes. We have Alstom representative meeting with us on a daily basis. They are also there when we have our weekly meeting with RTG and Alstom. Personally, since I received the letter from TSB, I've been calling Michael Curry, which is one of the big boss at Alstom, and Monday I'm going to meet with him on Monday. I will see with him how he can better collaborate with us so we can have a final solution. So I'm maintaining this relationship just to make sure that they do act. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for the report. I just, on the cartridge assembly failures that have been occurring, the way I read the TSB letter was that eventually that these had to be obviously heavily monitored in the current time, but eventually do those full assemblies have to be replaced? Is that where we're potentially heading with this? And then the second corollary question to that is, for stage two vehicles that are being delivered, is this a fix that is coming for those stage two vehicles, or are we getting the same, essentially the same design that's in those cartridge assemblies?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of the first question, the actual inspection work that is being undertaken by Alstom at the MSF is measuring the play, so measuring the gap between the axle, which is inserted inside the hub. And so as wear takes place, that gap gets bigger and there is more play. So they're actively monitoring the play. And when they reach a certain threshold, they remove that assembly and they replace the axle. So that was the first question. And then the second question in terms of what's the plan for stage 2? So that brings in the discussion around the root cause analysis. So we have the TSB investigation, which is crucial input to that root cause analysis. It very much provides a lot of information regarding the vehicle itself and the axles that have failed. We also have a number of other investigations which are feeding into the root cause analysis. So we've had a review of the track infrastructure, the rail, the switches, the lubrication which is applied. We have that report, which is now in its final state, call it the TTCI report. And that's looking more on the infrastructure side rather than looking on the vehicle side. We also have NRC engaged in looking at a wheel rail profile study. So that's looking at the interaction. And we're expecting them to make recommendations on what should be the wheel rail interface moving forward. So that's another critical element and report and investigation that will feed into the overall root cause analysis. But the fix, the work that needs to be done, won't be determined fully until we have that root cause analysis. There will be recommendations and corrective actions that will be included in that analysis. And that's where we'll understand what do we need to do with the track, what do we need to do with the operations, what changes do we need to make to the speed, what changes potentially need to be made to the bearing or to the axle or other components. And so we're looking at it from a systematic basis because the track infrastructure responds to how the vehicle's running on the track, and the vehicle responds to the condition of the track. It's a system. And so we're looking to find a solution which deals with the whole system and not just parts of the system.
Okay, thank you, Chair. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't see any other questions. So I appreciate the suggestion that they come forward today. I appreciate the effort by staff today. I know we'll have some concerns by councillors that they didn't have the opportunity to be here today, so I apologize in advance. But I think it was important that we bring this to the table today and allow for some questions and answers. We have 103 recommendations. In my mind, this is the #1 recommendation that we need to follow up on, not just for phase 1, but for phase 2. And I understand that you'll be available, Renee, for media after to continue some of the questions likely that we've seen this morning. And also with staff or our fellow councillors who weren't able to be here today. I expect you will, as you always will, be available to them if they have questions. And we are certainly due for, I think, a more comprehensive report on phase 2. And we'll work on scheduling that. And obviously, this element will continue to be a key component on the reports and dialogue with council as we go forward at this committee. So again, thank you for everyone's effort today. A bit rusty on our first meeting for a very new committee, but I think we made some progress. So I thank you all today. And if I can have a motion to move by Councillor Tierney, we adjourn. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.